Congratulations to all our winners and indeed all our participants. Your contributions have truly made this event memorable.
I now invite Yashdeep Kulkarni, the General Secretary of the Students' Council, to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you, Yashdeep.
As we draw the curtains on the 27th edition of CRMD, we reflect on the battlefield we've just witnessed. Not one of swords, but of strategy. Not of power, but of persuasion.
Today's debates were more than matches of intellect. They were calculated moves on a grand chessboard of global thought, where each speaker made their mark with truth, tenacity, and triumph.
We extend a heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guests, our panel of judges, our faculty, our exceptional participants, and every individual who's made this celebration of critical discourse possible. Skip.
And
as we leave, let us do so with wiser minds. Because in debate, as in chess, it's not about who dominates the board, but who understands its design.
until we meet again, may your thoughts remain sharp, your truths remain bold, and your words always move the world one step forward.
That's all from us. Have a great day ahead. This is Shalom Mendes
And Joshua DeMello signing off.
Is there more light? It's the same. Okay.
Hello, check. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay. ठीक है. No, but I can't see. It's just lots of shadow. It's right behind me. It's okay. चलेगा.
Brown.
Seat. मतलब, am I supposed to sit for the whole debate? Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I'd like to kindly ask each of you to please put your mobile phones on silent mode. Thank you. A good head and a good heart are always the formidable combination. But add to that a tongue sharpened by truth, and you have the most powerful tool to shake the foundations of oppression. Debate is exactly that tool. And when minds clash, not in hate, but in pursuit of clarity, the world changes.
These timeless words by Nelson Mandela beautifully encapsulate the spirit of what we gather to witness today, a celebration of clarity, courage, and conviction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is our immense honor to welcome you to the grand finale of the 27th edition of the Father Conceicao Rodrigues Memorial Debate, CRMD 2025.
I am Shalom Mendes, and with me is Joshua DeMello. And it is our sincere privilege to accompany you through an afternoon steeped in intellectual curiosity, bold ideas, and the spirited pursuit of truth.
Distinguished guests, honorable judges, revered faculty, esteemed participants, and fellow seekers of truth, we stand at the dawn of a moment that is more than just an event. The 27th edition of the Father Conceicao Rodrigues Memorial Debate is not merely a competition, but the continuation of a proud legacy, one that for over a quarter century has sharpened intellect, challenged assumptions, and cultivated voices that echo far beyond these walls.
Our theme for this year is the grand chessboard, moves of the modern empire. It's a reflection of how global power today is wielded not through force, but through strategy, silence, and influence.
As we navigate this ever-shifting chessboard of power and perception, each debate becomes a move which is deliberate, daring, and destined to reshape the game.
Before we delve into the heart of today's debate, we'd like to introduce our distinguished guests who have graced us with their presence. It is our profound honor and privilege to welcome our chief guest for the day, Mr. Sanjay Zog. With over 38 years of illustrious experience in journalism, Mr. Zog has been a voice of integrity and insight in the world of media. He has worked with some of the country's most respected publications, including Midday, India Post, The Daily, Financial Express, Business Standards, DNA, and Free Press Journal, while also contributing to Reuters in the past. His expertise has spanned politics and public affairs at central, state, civic, and local levels, in-depth coverage of finance, infrastructure, trade and commerce, multilateral organizations, diplomatic relations, G20, WTO, and the environment. The list goes on and on. Beyond print, he's also contributed to HW News Channel, further amplifying his reach and impact. Today, he continues to shape narratives and guides discourse as a contributing editor at IANS News Service. We are truly privileged to have such a distinguished journalist and thought leader with us. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Jog, for honoring us today.
Our guest of honor for the day is Purvi Bhave. She is a versatile TV anchor, actor, and classical dancer with over a decade of experience across television, live events, and performing arts. She has hosted prestigious platforms such as Tata IPL 2023, Marathi Jio Cinema, ABP Mazha, DD Sayadri, and ETV Marathi, and shared the stage with luminaries including A.R. Rahman, Madhuri Dixit, Rohit Shetty, and Harsha Bhogle. An accomplished actress, she has worked in acclaimed Marathi films and theatre productions, while also pursuing a passion for Bharatnatyam as a performer and founder of the House of Nritya Academy in Mumbai. Trained for over 17 years under Dr. Sandhya Purecha, she is a recipient of national scholarships, the Singarmani title, the Natwar Gopi Krishna Award, and the Girnar Ratna Puraskar. Purvi continues to inspire as a dynamic performer, blending tradition with modern expression across multiple art forms.
Thank you, ma'am. Also guest of honor is now our privilege to introduce Mr. Adit Ganguly. With over a decade of experience as an editorial professional, Mr. Ganguly has carved an inspiring career across some of India's most celebrated publications, including Harper's Bazaar, Cosmopolitan, Brides Today, and DNA. Currently, as assistant editor at Harper's Bazaar India, Cosmopolitan, and Brides Today, he's played a pivotal role in relaunching digital platforms, curating impactful content, and spearheading high-profile events such as Cosmoblogger Awards, Bazaar Lug Experiences, and the India Today Conclave. Mr. Ganguly's expertise extends far beyond editorial work, from curating and executing innovative communication strategies to building strong networks with leading PR and celebrity managers, influencers, and thought leaders. His contributions have consistently elevated the brands he's worked with. His journey reflects the deep commitment of storytelling, leadership, and creativity, the values that resonate with the very essence here at CRMD. Thank you, Mr. Adit Ganguly, for your presence here. Thank you, sir.
To honor our distinguished guests, we now invite our director, Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza, onto the stage and felicitate them with a sapling as a symbol of growth and enduring wisdom. We would also like to warmly welcome Mr. Sanjay Zog. It is a great honor to present you with a symbol of sapling as a respect and gratitude.
Ms. Purvi Bhave, Mr. Adit Ganguly. We are privileged to have you here with us. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza, for honoring our distinguished guests. We would now like to introduce our esteemed jury for the debate.
It is with great pleasure that we introduce our first judge for today, Dr. Chumki Biswas, an associate professor at Thadumal Chani Engineering College, Mumbai, with 22 years of teaching experience. She holds a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Mumbai and specializes in task-based learning of listening and speaking. A key figure in curriculum design, she has led the syllabus development for professional communication and ethics at Mumbai University for over a decade. Dr. Biswas is a Cambridge certified examiner, English rater for the Ministry of Civil Aviation, and subject matter expert with Oxford University Press for 17 years, having conducted 500 plus workshops. She also contributes to TCS Anand as a test material developer for national level assessments. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today.
We are pleased to introduce Nilima Malhotra, an accomplished educator with over 20 years of experience in international education. She has led academic teams in leading IB World Schools and serves as an IB examiner for English language and literature, as well as an IELTS and Cambridge English examiner. As a teacher trainer and subject matter expert for TCS, she has guided educators in IGCSE and A-level pedagogy and contributed to content development and digital learning. Her strengths lie in constructional leadership, curriculum design, and mentoring both students and teachers. Well beyond the classroom, she is a passionate nature lover, an advocate for inclusive education and youth mental health. She believes in learning with curiosity, listening with empathy, and leading with integrity. Wow. Thank you, ma'am, for gracing us here.
We are privileged to welcome Dr. Dhananjay K. Thekedat, who is an associate professor in the Department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering at Thadumal Chani Engineering College, with over 27 years of teaching experience. He holds a PhD in Electronics and Telecommunication from Mumbai University and an MTech in Biomedical Engineering from IIT Bombay. His core areas of expertise include image processing, digital signal processing, and machine learning, particularly in biomedical applications. He has guided numerous undergraduate projects and played a key role in developing DSP and image processing laboratories. He is proficient in MATLAB and related tools. Dr. Thekidat has offered several research and over 730 citations on Google Scholar and over 500 on Scopus. He received the Best Paper Award at MISP 2022 and has multiple patents and technical publications to his name. He is actively involved in academic administration, serving on committees related to exams, anti-ragging, student grievances, and industry institute partnerships. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
To honor our jury, we'd invite our principal, Dr. Surendra Singh Rathod, to please come up on stage and felicitate our judges with a sapling.
We welcome Dr. Chumki Biswas. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence today.
Nilima Malhotra. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today.
Dr. Dhananjay Thekidat. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Principal Sir, for honoring our judges with this meaningful gesture.
And now, the moment we've all been anticipating is finally here. The stage is set for a battle of minds where perspectives will collide, ethics will be questioned, and convictions will be tested. It's time to illuminate, to understand, and perhaps to transform the way we see the world.
As we step into the arena of debate, we aren't just merely exchanging arguments. We are navigating the grand chessboard of our times, where every perspective is a move, every question a challenge, and every voice a shape, forcing a voice of force shaping the empires of thought and influence.
We'd now like to welcome our finalists. On team proposition is CRMD 11. And on team opposition is CRMD 21. Kindly alight the stage. We also welcome our adjudicator and invite our moderator for this round, Celine Sibi, to join us.
With that, we hand over to Celine Sibi, our moderator, to begin the debate. May the most compelling arguments win, and may we all gain valuable insights from this discussion. Let the debate begin.
Good afternoon, everyone, honorable judges, adjudicator, and debaters. Before we start our debate for today, all are requested to kindly set your phones or any other devices that may disturb the debate to silent mode. This debate will come to order. The motion before us for the final round of CRMD 2025 is, this House believes that humanitarian intervention in the modern geopolitical landscape functions more as a tool of strategic interest than as a response to moral obligation. Representing the proposition, we have CRMD 11, and representing the opposition, we have CRMD 21. On behalf of the House, I would like to extend a sincere welcome to our judges, Dr. Chumki Biswas, Nilima Malhotra, and Dr. Dhananjay, and to our adjudicator, Sanjot Umrajkar. So the debate format stands as follows. Participants must approach the podium for their opening and closing speeches. Teams are requested to remain seated during the refutation rounds. Each team will have one member deliver the opening speech and the other the closing speech. The opening speeches will be 5 minutes each, starting with the proposition, followed by the opposition. Out of this 5 minutes, there will be a warning bell at 4 minutes, another warning bell at 4 minutes 45 seconds, and the final bell, double bell at 5 minutes, and a 15-minute second grace period will be followed past that. This will be followed by a 20-minute refutation round where the opposition will pose the first question answered by the proposition, followed by alternating turns. Each side can provide a 15-second comment after each answer. Teams are requested to stick to the given time limits, especially during the refutation rounds. Finally, the closing speeches will take place, starting with the opposition and followed by the proposition. A grace period of only 15 seconds will be allowed for each speech. Heckling is strictly prohibited. Heckling includes any form of interruption or disruptive commentary while another speaker is presenting. Reading from phones is strictly prohibited during the speeches. Debaters must present their arguments without relying on mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding this? Timekeeping. Opening speeches will be 5 minutes each, followed by a 15-second grace period. Refutation round, 20 minutes in total. Closing speeches, 5 minutes each, followed by a 15-second grace period. So now I call upon the first speaker from the side proposition to begin their opening speech.
This House believes that humanitarian intervention in the modern geopolitical landscape functions more as a tool of strategic interest than as a response to moral obligation. First of all, let us look at the definition. What do we mean by humanitarian intervention? Military, political, or economic involvement in another sovereign state that is justified on grounds of protecting civilians from mass suffering such as genocide, civil war, or famine. Now, what is modern geopolitical landscape? Post Cold War to today, where global powers like the US, NATO, China, and Russia dominate these interventions. And when we say it functions more as a tool of strategic interest than as a response to moral obligation, we refer that while humanitarian language is used, the primary motive behind interventions is securing power, resources, or influence. The humanitarian concern is secondary, selective, and often abandoned once strategic aims are met. Now, what is our stance in the debate? We believe humanitarian intervention is primarily a tool of power politics and not genuine morality. Stances States intervene where it benefits their strategic, economic, or security interests, while equally severe crises in another unprofitable regions are ignored. Now, moving to my split up, as a first speaker, I will prove to you three things. Number one, that interventions disproportionately occur where strategic value exists. Number two, that the rhetoric of humanitarianism is used as a cover for broader selfish agendas. Number three, post intervention neglect reveals that morality was never the true goal. Moving on to my argument one, selective interventions prove morality was never the true driver. If humanitarian intervention was really about saving lives and conceding to these moral obligations that these countries claim to when they do the said act, which is humanitarian intervention, it would happen wherever civilians are suffering. But in reality, what do we face? There are no lack of problems and crises in today's world. However, powerful countries only step in when the crisis also affects their own interests. Think about it. If a country has oil, amazing trade routes, and they have something that benefits the powerful nations, suddenly the superpowers care. But if the same suffering is in a poor, irrelevant country that is of no direct benefit to the said superpower, no intervention happens. And this brings me to another significant point. Who decides who intervenes and who doesn't? it exposes an hierarchy and not the humanitarianism that all these countries vote for. Let us look at some examples. In Rwanda in 1994, when 800,000 were killed in genocide, there was no intervention. Because why? Rwanda had no strategic value to these superpowers, so they had no incentive to help them per se. Meanwhile, in Libya in 2011, the NATO intervened in a matter of weeks. Why? Because it was an oil rich state in a crucial region. The same could be said about Sudan and Darfur, where nearly 300,000 were killed, but the international community largely ignored it. Moving on to my second argument, the language of morality masks strategic agendas. When governments intervene, they rarely say that it's for oil or power or influence, because obviously, why would anybody want to admit to that? Rather than that, they stick to these safe terms as protecting civilians and make it sound more noble and humanitarian. However, the real reason behind that language would be to for regime change, or influence expansion, or to contain a rival. This could be seen in the Libya example as previously stated, where in 2011 NATO claimed that it was protecting the civilians when it initially intervened. However, the operation quickly shifted to regime change when it removed Gaddafi. What followed was civil war. Civilians suffered more after the intervention, showing welfare was never really the true focus. A similar example could be seen in Iraq in 2003. The US framed it as liberating the Iraqis from Saddam. However, the real goal was oil and regional power. However, as the argument states, no country would want to uh, say these explicit terms and mask it behind humanitarian reasons. Moving on to my argument 3, abandonment after intervention exposes the truth. If interventions were really about humanitarianism, then countries would stick around and rebuild societies, protect civilians long term, and make sure the people are safe. But this almost never happens. Instead, once strategic goals are achieved, or if they fail, countries just withdraw and leave the chaos behind. This shows that they were never committed to the humanitarian goal in the first place. The best example could be seen in Afghanistan. For 20 years, the US said that it was there to protect the Afghans, especially in women. But in 2021, it suddenly pulled out. What was the turnout? Overnight, the Taliban took over, and 80% of Afghan women lost access to education and work rights. The humanitarian concern disappeared the moment America's strategic plan collapsed. In conclusion, humanitarian intervention today is not the triumph of morality. It is the triumph of manipulation. It is not the language of saving lives. It is the language of saving interests. And every time we accept this lie, we tell the world, the most vulnerable, that their suffering matters only if it benefits the powerful. This house cannot endorse that hypocrisy. This house must call it out for what it is. And that is why we are proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank you for your opening speech. Now we shall hear the opening speech of the first speaker from the side opposition.
Check. Yeah. Ready? Respected dignitaries, my fellow opponents, and everyone present here, let's just clear out what humanitarian intervention actually means. According to Britannica.com, this is the real definition: actions undertaken by an organization or organizations that are intended to alleviate extensive human suffering within the borders of a sovereign state. We all heard the definition, and let's just make it clear that nowhere was it mentioned that humanitarian intervention actually includes selfish interests and self motives, which are a part of it. So the whole standing that it's done for selfish interest immediately vanishes. Let's just take a very, very simple example. If your house is burning and your neighbor's house is burning, you taking a bucket to save them, also saving your house, is that actually a selfish interest or a moral obligation? So here are my 3 steps to guide to an actual point of reference that selfish interests are not a point with humanitarian intervention. My first and very foremost point is altruism. Altruism is the quality to focus about other people or something which is larger than itself. A very prime example here, that democracies are built by people. People see, people feel. We see genocides, we see massacres, and thus we have the power to compel our democracies itself. And this has happened. Opposition here gave very, very good examples of what failed. but smartly managing to avoid everything that has actually happened and which is right, and what is actually called humanitarian intervention. Let's talk about Somalia in 1992. US sent aid to a country with no global leverage, with no riches, with no oil. Why? Altruism and humanitarian intervention in its pure and truest form, thus stating the moral obligation which the House mentions here. This altruism is not there to alleviate mankind to heaven, it's there to save humanity from hell. I'd also like to mention the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, where India, US, Japan used their navy ships and helped countries which were born away with it, like Indonesia and everything, and helping them out of pure humanitarian and moral obligation. Point two, cost of inaction is very bloodier and very broader than doing an imperfect action. So now here, let's just, for debate's sake, understand that in reality, there is humanitarian intervention which might have a selfish interest. Well, what's your alternative to that? If you do not intervene, what you're trying to prove here is that loss of thousands and thousands of people of life have lower value to you than some country might satisfying its selfish interest. That's like saying a doctor cannot cure all diseases, so let's take away his scalpel because that is not right. It sounds absurd because it is absurd. Point number three and step number three, which I would like to point here, humanitarian intervention as an object of society. Humanitarian intervention is societal's external conscience. What we see is what we believe. We have laws, correct, inside a country to protect us from murders and massacres happening, which protects our right, whilst intervention is the global image of it. So let's talk about what actually should happen. As I said the premise, I gave the examples, let's talk about the framework which is required to achieve what we actually want here. Expanding and strengthening the right to protect, which is an existing law, existing rule for everyone present around here, into legally enforcing doctrine. Also, since we have the Geneva Conventions for the UN, which helps all the soldiers who are landing in a different country safely return to their home, well, why can't we have that, a humanitarian convention for regulating interventions? Just let's think about that for a second. So, whilst I talked about all of these three steps, let's imagine what the impact what might be. The world draws a red line against genocide and massacres, something a person should never cross. Second, if by refusing to reduce humanity to a mere calculation of power, we believe that law and justice is actually prevalent. So to conclude, if the House accepts this motion, it accepts a very dangerous cynicism. No nation ever acts for people for just their pure selfish interest. Humanity does have a voice. So let's think, where do we stand and where do we want to live? In a world where skewed interests, according to the proposition, does save life and does save humanity, or a world where genocide news are as random as a Sunday crossword puzzle? Thank you.
Now we shall be beginning with the refutation round. So the side opposition will be posing the first question, and we will be followed by the answer and a 15-second comment. You all are requested to keep your context to your questions short and your questions precise, and accordingly we shall move on. I hope both the teams are ready. Use the mic, please.
Hello, audible? So my first question to the proposition here is, the Khmer Rouge regime in 1978, correct, ended due to a good intervention on moral obligation. Do you find any selfish interest in that, or do you accept the proposition that human intervention happens for moral obligations?
Okay, so am I audible? Yeah. So first and foremost, it's a brilliant point that you brought up, right? This was a case of a very good humanitarian intervention. What we're trying to bring up is the selectivity of all of this, right? So you brought up an example, that's great. But how about another example, which was if you take Kuwait, the 1991 Gulf War, and Congo 1998, 2003, right? 5 million people had died in Congo. That's the greatest number of casualties since World War II, right? But no one intervened there. This was during the same century, during the same decade. But instead, the United States and other Western allies decided to go to Kuwait in order to contain Saddam Hussein. We are talking about the selectivity of all of this. So I'm glad that this intervention was great, but the question is, why hasn't it happened in other strategic regions as well? For example, why hasn't it happened in Congo? Why hasn't it happened in Darfur, which is in Sudan? So what we are trying to, what we already implied and what we are trying to say is there is a selectivity to all of this. So yes, it's great that this one good intervention was there, but what about other places like Congo and Darfur and Sudan?
Hello. Okay. Am I audible? Yeah. So the proposition's point here was that all interventions are not on moral basis, but are power dynamics. But when we gave you an example of a intervention that was purely moral basis, you just countered us with an example of something that was not. We could sit here all day and talk about examples of interventions that were of moral, or that were done by morality, and ones that were not, but that would not lead to the answer to this debate.
You all can pose your question.
I would like to question the opposition on their understanding of the motion itself. Through their speech, they had mentioned how they had defined humanitarian intervention, that it is of pure intentions, the same as our definition. However, they had questioned if we had an alternative as such. My question to you is, do you believe that we are against humanitarian intervention? Because the motion states we are here to debate whether it is for moral obligations or for strategic intentions. So do you think we are against it?
So in my speech, I never mentioned that you were against it. All I'm trying to focus here is that when you talk about strategic interest, you tend to glorify the only points available which supports your motion. What I'm trying to say here, for every one example which you have, we have 5 examples to prove it's not. And to explain that when we talk definition, the definition shows that selfish interest is not a part of what we talk as humanitarian intervention. So thus, humanitarian intervention falls under our category of moral obligation. And when you talk about selfish interest, you yourself negate it by saying it concludes with humanitarian intervention.
Also, I would like to add to that. Your point that you're trying to keep is that humanitarian intervention is always a power play. It's always politics. It's always dynamics. But what we here are trying to tell you that humanitarian intervention, even today, it is still the primary goal of humanitarian intervention is still humanity. It's still altruism, and it is still kindness from the people of the country.
I agree with your point where you say it has genuine interest. However, again, as the debate states, it is not whether or for, against, or in support of humanitarian intervention. Humanitarian intervention is genuine, no objections. However, it is being done for the wrong reasons. The intention behind the intervention is to gain a strategic advantage over the nation rather than to help them from a pure heart.
So I would like to ask the proposition. So I'd like to ask the proposition that in my opening speech, I mentioned my pillar 1, and I haven't found any answers to that. So would you like to comment on what I said, that altruism being the basis of moral obligation and human intervention? Altruism being the basis from where moral obligation bonds and from where human intervention comes, and not strategic interests or not selfish interests. Okay. So altruism, as I mentioned, it is the quality to focus and care about other people and something larger than life or something bigger than yourself. I also give you an example about the firehouse and the nation. So yeah.
What you're saying again is that do you believe in the genuinity of it? Again, humanitarian intervention, of course, has the definition, as I stated, as you repeated, humanitarian intervention is for good reasons. It's with pure intentions. And yes, there have been few examples where countries have gone and done it with pure intentions. However, the debate today is whether it is more, in today's world, it is becoming more of strategic interest rather than with pure intentions. So yes, there are a few examples that you stated, which is very right. However, for one, again, we have every 10 examples. So in today's world and in past and in today and in the future, we can see more of strategic interest being prioritized over moral obligations for the said humanitarian interventions taking place.
Okay. So, as you mentioned about the modern geopolitical landscape, that humanitarian intervention rises from moral obligation, but has strategic interests in place. Well, then it's your point of the proposition to show that how it is only strategic interest or better than moral obligation, which you have failed to do so, whilst our examples have shown that moral obligation is the basis of it.
Comment, no?
Oh, question.
Oh, sorry. Okay, again, verbatim he said it is on us to prove how it is only strategic interest. However, the motion again, it is more as a tool of strategic interest rather than a response to moral obligation. Again, in your question was, even if it stems from moral obligation, it still has strategic interest. So prove to me why it is only strategic interest. However, we are saying, let the reason be whatever, even if it has a moral obligation as a big response, there is the response or any action the human intervention takes does not take place without a strategic personal gain, at least at the backbone. And most of the interventions that take place have majorly the strategic interest as the backbone.
Okay, so we tell you at this side of the debate that moral obligation is the primary reason of countries intervening in other countries. We also agree that there might be cases where countries have done it in a selfish way, but we still believe that in the majority of the cases, and primarily moral obligation will be the reason where a country will intervene. We gave you an example where a country intervened into another country's war to stop it with no benefit from it whatsoever, which tells you that in our side of the spectrum, there are cases where countries do this without any gain of their own. Now, there might be an example or two about countries which do it for their own benefit, but still, primarily, it is primarily humanitarian intervention. It's not just about wars. It's about the aid that we give to so many countries. So much aid flows around the world. So much aid goes to Gaza, goes to Ukraine. All of that does not benefit the host country. They could have used that resources in their own, but they do it because the people care. The people care about the people of Gaza, and the people care about the people of Ukraine.
Also, to add to his point, I would just like to quote few examples to support his motion. Example like Tanzania's intervention in Uganda that proved for a moral obligation in 1979, or in the Cerebranca, which I stated. So these are quotables and proper examples how we are suggesting that at the prime of it all, it is moral obligation and not strategic or selfish interests.
I am so glad you brought up Gaza and Ukraine, especially Gaza, right? So recently, in the United Nations, the United States had vetoed sending aid to Gaza, right? And let's just take the 21st century as an example, right? The United States, 2003 in Iraq, and the United States abandoning Afghanistan, right? Selective interest. Why Iraq? They claimed they were WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, and instead they only acquired oil from there and to curb Saddam Hussein, right? The same United States today is denying aid to Gaza. Why? Because Gaza reduces Israel's regional influence, which is a major ally to the United States. Where is good intention there? So this point is completely redundant. How are you justifying, United States denying aid to go to Gaza, but at the same time saying it's okay for them to do this in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yes, I would request the proposition to kindly pace yourselves and not rush while speaking, and to keep your comments short.
Okay, so this is the most important question of this debate that I would like to keep to the proposition house. What about the cost of inaffection? What about if you do not want countries to interfere into other countries on humanitarian basis? What about the genocides that will occur in the future? Sure, it has caused harm when countries have done this for self-interest. But what about the amount of genocides and the amount of evil that will take place if countries stop holding other countries accountable?
So first and foremost, to reiterate, we are not against human intervention. For some reason, you keep saying that. We are not against human intervention. Now, let me explain how genocide works, right? Typically, when a country intervenes in another country's political business and then abandons that state, it leaves that country in civil war, right? And what happens is, yes, people kill each other, it leaves the country in political turmoil. Take Venezuela, for example, right? Maduro came into power, committed genocide in Venezuela simply because of Venezuela being abandoned by its respective allies. Okay, if you're not taking Venezuela into account, you can take other nations as well. Where Afghanistan, for example, right? What Taliban is doing is they're killing minorities, right, who do not belong to, whatever Islamic composition they belong to, right? Typically, the word they use was genocide. Genocide only happens when, or usually happens when, or also happens when these nations abandon the countries where they interfered initially. Take Iraq, for example. So this is what genocide is. And by the way, American intervention in Iraq was genocide. You killed 1 million Iraqis. You killed 1 million Iraqis. America killed 1 million Iraqis. So isn't that a form of humanitarian intervention? Right? Your own statement contradicts what you're trying to propose here.
So just to take a point from the previous conversation we had, it's quite an irony you talk about having selectiveness whilst we quote our examples, whilst your own doesn't hold true when we weigh it against ours. And whilst talking about the examples that you give, Venezuela, Iraq, or Taliban, that diplomacy is not equal to strategic interest. Military incapacity to take action at a certain place cannot be reframed as lack of moral obligation. So that's
Also, US intervention in Iraq was about US not wanting Iraq to have weapons of mass destruction. That is a military goal, and that is not a humanitarian goal.
The teams are requested that during the comments, only one member shall speak and second member is not allowed to take over. You all can do so during the answers, but not during the short comments.
Comment, right? It's our comment, right? No, it was our comment. Or your comment, okay.
Your question, please.
If morality drove intervention, why did the US withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021 knowing civilians would be left at the mercy of the Taliban?
Okay, sure. So morality. Let's talk about morality. Morality is when you when you feel compelled to do something, and when it does not benefit you. When you see a puppy on the road who is dying, you feel compelled to save it. You get the puppy home. But if that road is very busy and say trying to save the puppy got you in danger, you would not do that. In the same way, US tried intervening in Afghanistan. It tried its operations in Afghanistan. They operated there for 20 years, but it was getting too expensive for the US. It was getting ineffective. It was just leading to casualty. So the US decided to arm the Afghanistani. They decided to train them. They tried to educate them, and then they decided to withdraw. US withdrawed not because its interest was over. In fact, none of its self-interest that you keep talking about, they do it for self-interest. No political or strategic interest of US was completed by it staying in Afghanistan for 20 years. It is one of the most biggest military failures ever. So there was no interest was completed. They could have pulled out 20 years ago and they still would be in the same position. But they tried for 20 years, and when it was getting too expensive, they pulled out. You do a good thing, but you don't do it when it gets too taxing on your own citizens.
Comment, right? Okay, so this is a United Nations UNSC report, right? Which basically stated that before Trump pulled out, or before Trump passed the bill to pull out of Afghanistan, that Taliban had lost 98% of the land it initially had in Afghanistan, or 98% of control it had, geographical control it had over Afghanistan, right? And for a country which has a budget of $1 trillion for military intervention, that's the United States, right? They spend $1 trillion on their military, which is significantly bigger than 80 percentile of the world's economy. And Trump's very own reasoning in the White House was the fact that the United States simply doesn't want to spend any more money on Afghanistan. It wasn't even about the loss of life. So if the justification was about something monetary, that clearly shows a lack of intent to end the situation over there. And they've clearly abandoned Afghanistan in terms of financial interests. Not once during Trump's press conferences in the White House did he mention the casualties of the American militaries, right? And if your contention is the fact that this is a military failure, let's take into account that before Trump came into presidency, Taliban had lost 98% of geographical control. So it's not like the situation was against the United States or the Russian alliance that fought with the US to kind of subdue Taliban. So your point again is redundant.
The proposition is requested to keep its comment short. Question?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in my opening speech, the framework for how moral obligation is heavier than the selfish interest. And I would like an explanation from the proposition team as to why my framework fails and why do you think that strategic interest is still a ground upper than moral obligation?
So typically, when you're talking about frameworks, right? Frameworks are something prudential, something that is written, right? And these can easily be advocated or integrated into legislative law. When you're talking about moral frameworks, it's something like international law, right? International law isn't something that is strictly defined. It's a consensus, a moral consensus which several countries come towards and say these are norms we should abide by. So what is a moral framework? I'll tell you why your framework fails. Because you never gave me what your moral framework entails. When you're proposing a framework, you need to say this is what it does and this is how it will be implemented and this is what nations should do, right? So without any implementation procedure, your solution is completely useless.
So again, reiterate verbatim my opening speech about what I said. I gave you a 3-step framework of what it entails, what it occurs, and how it will come into effect. If you want, I can read it from right here. So I'm sorry, but your point doesn't hold.
Your question?
Okay, to discuss strategic bias, why do interventions, even with coming from a very good place and only due to moral obligations, consistently happen in geopolitical valuable regions like the Middle East, but not in places like Myanmar or the Congo?
Okay, so you mentioned in your statement geopolitical rich areas, right? Valuable regions. Okay. Tell me what value was found in East Timor in 1999 when it was saved? Or what value was found in Kosovo when NATO intervened? Or what value was found in Somalia or the tsunami relief that India gave? I can give you millions and millions of examples. When we talk about moral obligation and doing humanitarian intervention for moral obligation, it does not see or check the land which has valuable regions or not. It is helped on a moral basis. So the question itself doesn't hold here.
I am so glad you brought up Kosovo. So let's take a look at the geographical location of Kosovo. Where is Kosovo? Kosovo is in Europe, right at the back door of who? NATO, right? And who are these countries that are typically at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to intervening in other countries' politics? NATO nations. So the answer itself is very self-explanatory when you brought up Kosovo. That was a blunder on your part, right? So again, I'll keep reiterating this statement. Every time you propose a moral framework, there is no fixed, definite set of prudential laws that these countries should ratify or accede to. So, in your reply, you mentioned that, yes, this is what we mentioned, the implementation procedure, but if that is your implementation procedure, then it's half-baked. That is not how laws are reformed and laws are made. Thank you.
So my last question to the proposition side is a very simple philosophical question that I want to ask you, which stems from our debate point that we are trying to keep here. Proposition, do you think human selfishness is more than human kindness?
On a personal note, sure, human kindness, but we are talking about countries with political interests, with their citizens at heart, and we do not live in an ideal, imaginary, amazing world. We live in a world where politics takes priority, where we have to, good or bad, we need to play by politics in every single day. The place you work, even at your house, with your relatives, families, everywhere you go, politics is there. And when we are talking at a scale of the entire world, where we have nations, alliances, we have wars going on, so sorry, at that level, even if I personally don't like it, it is definitely strategic interest that comes first.
Yeah. So the thing is, proposition says that people care about kindness more, but countries are selfish. The thing is, countries are just expressions of people. Countries are systems of people. People's interests are displayed by countries' interests. The pressure that public creates is what the politicians have to do there. So what people want is going to be expressed by what countries want.
No, you cannot comment on this. You can proceed to the next question.
If during humanitarian interventions, once they are done, the impact of the post-war after the intervention is done is largely greater than the crisis in itself in most cases. In that case, when in cases where the country that intervened has the financial resources to help, it doesn't. So where is your genuinity or the moral obligation in those cases? Do you not agree to a strategic interest that they left after they got what they wanted?
As you mentioned that the loss after the intervention is higher, and if there is moral obligation occurring, that where is that moral obligation? I would like to draw your attention to the place of Cerebranca, all right? And this, sorry, I'll take it higher. Okay, audible? Yeah, okay. So I would like to take your attention to the place in Cerebranca, and I would like to mention that that is a very prime example countering what you just proposed to me, that because after the intervention, that place was laid barren and laid uneven and unscathed, but the interventing countries helped it come out of it. And also, in the last point you mentioned about Kosovo, so the topic when I mentioned, it was 1999, and the frameworks that you are mentioning right now is about the current time.
Teams are requested to know that this is the last 30 seconds of refutation. You can complete your
I
answer.
can complete mine. Huh? Okay. in 1999, and what you're talking about it is right now. So very smartly, you just escaped the point of when the intervention was actually done and stating points which are helping your fact now.
Okay, so you brought up the example of Sierra Blanca, right? But we must take into account why there was a successful intervention.
Opposition, any of you all, start. Yeah, this is your concise statement, not your closing speech. Yeah, proceed. Proceed.
The opposition side still strongly wants you to be optimistic, strongly wants you to know that humanitarian intervention still is an object of care, it still is an object of actual kindness, and not the dystopian that every humanitarian intervention is just evil. We also want you to know that if a country decides to not intervene somewhere because it is too expensive for them, or it is going to be too tricky to do that, or it is going to be harder, that is not actually immoral. It is not immoral to not intervene if it is harder, but it is still moral to intervene if it was easy.
You can proceed.
As much as every individual in this room stands for kindness and optimism, unfortunately, the world we live in doesn't work that way. And that is a fact we need to settle with. And even the best examples that have been brought up by the opposition had strategic underpinnings that we have showed through our arguments. And every time the opposition tries to show morality, we reveal the strategic backbone beneath it. And to reinstate what the opposition failed to understand, nobody on this dais is against human intervention. We simply state that the reality of the world is that the strategic interest is what drives it more than the moral obligation, may it exist or not.
Thank you to both the teams. Now I call upon the opposition to begin with their closing speech.
Respected dignitaries, respected dignitaries, my partner took you over 3 steps, 3 main points that we based our arguments on, and I am going to take you down from those 3 same steps. First, we'll talk about cost of inaction. What happens when countries stop intervening humanitarianly? What happens when we fix this narrative into everyone's head that humanitarian intervention is actually evil, humanitarian intervention is actually just done for self-interest? When everyone believes this, countries stop doing humanitarian intervention. And when countries stop doing humanitarian intervention, what happens? When countries stop doing humanitarian interventions, genocide starts happening. Countries start oppressing minorities in other countries. Countries will do evil without any fear of commendation from the international community. There are examples where humanitarian intervention was used as a tool of self-interest. But to say that all humanitarian intervention today, or most of humanitarian intervention today, is self-interest is a very gross misrepresentation. In their world, they tell us that we should not dignify humanitarian intervention in a way. They tell us that it is all bad, which is wrong. We tell you that it is very important to still consider humanitarian intervention at its face value. The point, the stare two, is humanitarian intervention as an object of society. I would like to explain it even better now, to exactly tell you where this comes from. Humans are social animals, and we live in a society that is designed to help the weak. When a strong person tries to oppress the weak, other people take it on themselves to stop that strong person from oppressing the weak. When a the main reason why a person that would probably do crime does not do it, because they know that they would go to jail for it. And this society makes sure that they are the protectors of the weak. This humanitarian intervention is just this object of society, but at the country level. It is where countries make sure that wrong is not happening. It is where countries make sure that other powerful countries are not taking advantage of weaker countries. It comes from it does not come from self-interest. It comes from altruism. It comes from kindness, and it comes from the social structure that we live in. And the last and the most important step is altruism. Kindness is a virtue. Kindness is a virtue of generosity, goodwill, and compassion. Kindness is when you help an injured bird knowing that you have nothing to gain from it. The proposition has tried to effectively say that this kindness does not exist at the country level. This kindness is just self-interest. Because whatever countries do is a reflection of what we want. Whatever actions of India in the international community is something that we want India to do at some point, because we elected the officials, we elected the representatives that do these things. So the proposition is effectively trying to paint that we are selfish, that we do not care about what is happening in the world, and that we are not like that. While it might look ineffective to them, I'll let you know that kindness matters. When you sitting here care about the life of a Palestinian, it echoes. Even though India has nothing to gain, India has such good relations with Israel. We have diplomatic relations, we have trade relations. We have nothing to gain from sending aid to Palestinians. But when you sitting here care about them, they do it. Government feels pressured to do it. And God willing, if more people care enough, then it could be a free country tomorrow. So I want you to please keep this optimistic thought in your mind. Thank you.
Now I call upon the side proposition to begin with their closing speech.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. So if humanitarian intervention were truly about morality, we wouldn't need to debate this motion, because morality does not discriminate. Yet interventions today are not everywhere where suffering exists, but where interests converge. This is not duty, this is design. Picking up from where my first speaker left, our case is clear. Humanitarian intervention today is the language of morality wrapped around the practice of strategic self-interest. Does this mean we're against humanitarian intervention? No. We're just saying that strategic self-interest often supersedes moral obligations. Now, I'll advance our case on 3 fronts. The first being selectivity, why morality fails as an explanation. The second being the human rhetoric, why it is a tool of legitimation. The third is abandonment, why outcomes prove intent coming to selectivity. First, coming to selectivity. Selectivity exposes the real driver. Morality applies equally, but interventions do not. Genocide in Rwanda, no large-scale Western intervention. But in Kosovo, in Europe, in NATO's background, immediate action. Famine in Yemen, ongoing atrocities in Sahel, minimal involvement. But in Libya, sitting on oil on a Mediterranean coast, saw bombs falling quickly. The opposition might say, but some interventions did save lives. Doesn't that show morality? Our response, saving lives in some cases doesn't prove morality was the motive. It proves those crises overlapped with interests. The very inconsistency proves strategy is the filter. So, morality is universal, intervention is not. The gap is strategy. Coming to the second point, humanitarian language is a camouflage. If states acted for morality, they would not need to disguise their motives. Yet time and again, they wrap strategic goals in proposals. Take Iraq 2003. Iraq 2003 wasn't sold as securing oil, it was liberating Iraqis from Saddam Hussein. But America ended up killing more people than Saddam Hussein. So what was the point of the intervention? The second point is NATO in Libya. Right? NATO in Libya wasn't marketed as containing instability on European borders. It was marketed as protecting civilians. So again, it's just a bunch of words that are morally framed. Moving on. So similarly, right, the responsibility to protect, or R2P, which the first speaker brought up, is invoked not as a binding law, but as a moral cover. And it's deployed only when convenient and ignored when it's not. Now, The opposition may argue, but moral language matters. It sets a standard. Our answer: standards bind only if they are applied consistently. Here, moral language is opportunistic, a tool to rally domestic publics and allies, not a genuine constraint. So the tagline here is morality is not motive, it is marketing. The third is abandonment. Abandonment proves that the intention was never moral. Right? The surest test of motive is what happens after the cameras leave. And here the record is damning. In Libya, the West toppled Gaddafi, declared success, and walked away, right? Leaving civil war and slave markets. In Afghanistan, after decades of claiming to protect civilian women's rights, the withdrawal left millions of women and citizens at the mercy of Taliban, a UN-recognized terrorist organization. So if morality drove action, commitment would last until people were safe. Instead, commitment only lasts until interests are met or costs grow too high, which is one of the other justifications for US leaving Afghanistan in the hands of Taliban, right? The opposition also said that short-term lives were saved. But were they, right? Morality cannot be measured in headlines. If civilians are abandoned back into chaos, the original motive was never to protect them. It was to achieve short-term goals. So morality does not quit when it gets hard. Strategy does. So now the question arises, who intervenes and who doesn't? This exposes a hierarchy, right? Not humanity. If humanitarian intervention were really about morality, any capable actor would intervene wherever civilians suffer. But in practice, only a small club of powerful nations decide where morality matters. The United States, NATO, and sometimes Russia or China choose when and where to intervene. Smaller states rarely initiate. They lack the capacity. They lack the capacity to sort out these situations, and more often than not, these situations are handed over to the United States, China, and Russia, and other several powerful nations. Right? So let's weigh the clashes. So what world have we shown you? The first we showed you was selectivity. Only strategic regions get help. The second was language. So humanitarianism is a branding for power. The third was abandonment. Outcomes reveal the truth. The opposition wants you to mistake effect for intent. But moral intent requires universality, consistency, and commitment. Strategic intent requires only convenience. Look at the record look at the records and tell me which explanation fits. So, we believe that we provided our reasons, arguments, and justified several of the opposition's questions. And we backed all of our arguments with statistics, and we hereby believe that we deserve to win this debate. Thank you.
He in his closing speech mentioned that opposition said this to what I replied this, but we never mentioned those points in the opening, neither in the refutal. No, he said 2 points in his second pillar, which he was mentioning about
Just
the
ask him
opposition.
the verbatim, so it will be fine.
When you mentioned your second point, you said the opposition said this, but I replied this.
Mike.
Okay, so when you gave your closing speech, yeah, the second point which you were mentioning, you twice mentioned that the opposition said this or
No, wait, I didn't say the opposition said this. I said the opposition may argue.
Okay.
Fair.
So that's not involving a new point, right? It's me argue. Yeah. Correct. Works.
So with this, we come to the end of the debate. I thank both the teams for their conduct today. We are now open to any questions and constructive commentary from our judges and the adjudicator.
Okay. Am I audible? Yeah,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to ask, were you allowed to use ChatGPT? Because I felt 95% of one party's content was taken from ChatGPT and there was nothing original or even a single sentence of your own. Am I right in thinking that you were allowed to use ChatGPT?
The usage of phone was allowed and AI tools were
No, no, no,
allowed,
no,
but it
no,
was
no,
not
no. I'm
required.
very specific in my question. Did you, the only AI tool kids use in today's time is ChatGPT. The others are not as good. Okay, so the go-to tool is always ChatGPT if you're looking at a writing assistant. So I want to know if you were allowed to use ChatGPT or you were allowed only to use Google to gather your data and frame your own content.
We were allowed.
Yeah, we were allowed
We
all
were-
resources available.
Yeah.
All resources available. Okay, that's my question. I wanted to know. Yeah, thank you.
Also, just for clarification, one thing, we do not use ChatGPT. I can share the resources we showed with you later on, in case it's either party, right?
Yeah, same works for us.
Yeah, both teams can share it because we were together when we were prepping. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Other questions from the judges' side?
I would like to ask both the teams, is this your stand in your personal life also, or is it because you have taken this at this forum that you have to speak for or against?
I think I'm very grounded. I understand this isn't a utopian society, right? People are more selfish than you realize. And I'm also a very skeptical person, so I feel like this perfectly played into our hands. The proposition side, of course, because more often than not, these political people, the rule of law becomes the rule of people with international leaders. So more often than not, they act with malicious intent, not genuine moral obligation or moral intent. So this is not how I am in my daily life. I consider myself to be a nice person, but I'm not too sure about world leaders.
And like I stand by what I fought for, being the opposition. I do believe that there is some good in every bad that we see. And I also do believe that a small light is enough, as we say, to cure the entire darkness. So when I talk about that interventions, should we stand for moral obligation, I support that motion. I do not think that it's a point for strategic strategic interest.
Yeah, and I think that whatever that they were saying about countries interfering only when it suits their interests somehow, and yeah, and whatever when they said, and a lot of those things were true. A lot of the times countries do this, and it is a very normal facade today to take that you are just doing it for humanitarian interests when you want to actually do military goals. But I still feel like it is a very dangerous narrative. I still feel like if a lot of people start believing that humanitarian intervention is always just self-interest, I still feel like that is very dangerous. So I was still happy to argue from this side, although it's not the most favorable side. Still happy to argue.
Yeah, and now that the debate's over, they brought up a lot of valid points as well. But to me, what was most damning recently was, the United States vetoing aid going into, Gaza, which is, it doesn't help. It doesn't benefit anyone, right? It doesn't benefit the United States if aid doesn't go in there. You're helping harmless civilians. You're not feeding, Hamas. So, when you read such stuff on a daily basis, you kind of gain a skeptical narrative on a lot of things. But like you said, there's a light in every single person, and I'm sure, at some point, someday, hopefully, the world comes to a consensus as to, these are the moral frameworks.
That's true. Like about the US and the Gaza thing, even I stand by that because that's just not required what happened. But I can't bring that up. So.
I congratulate both of you. Taking part in a debate is not easy, and it takes a lot of confidence to speak about things that you might not agree with but have been given a particular topic. I'm sure the opposition would have been happier being on this side, and it would have been much tougher for you all to be on the other side. Right? But in spite of that, you have done a very good job. I'm also glad you spoke about Gaza, Palestine. I wish you could have spoken about COVID. Right? That would have strengthened your argument because COVID, a lot of countries did help without having some strategic interest. Like, for example, India did provide a lot of medications. Cuba, for that matter, has been providing doctors to so many countries without having any strategic interest. So you could have taken up those points. But it was a tough job, and you have really done well, especially the opposition side, because it's always easy to debate something that is obviously negative. Right? There'll be so many examples where you see that there is obviously strategic interest, especially when it comes to US and NATO. So it's very easy to get examples, supporting the proposition. But as I said, that's why debate is very challenging, and you all did a very good job. Yeah?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Hi, congratulations for making this far. I've been adjudicating you for the in rounds as well. So it's good to see all of us together in the grand finals, right? As for feedback, just one negative feedback, but let me just talk about the positives here, right? I think both the teams were somewhat correct on the burden where you have to go ahead and prove that how this entire current status quo is just based on either strategic interest or whatever bad happenings are happening in the current world are stemmed from a response of moral obligation from countries to the mishaps that happen in the world, right? And I think both the this was a very to and fro debate, because I think both the sides were easily symmetricizing the arguments which were going all around. But yeah, the feedback comes here now is that just more weighing on, because since you're symmetricizing the arguments, you need to just go ahead and weigh that out a bit more. But I think, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you to the judges and the adjudicator. Now we are open to any question from the audience.
Check. Hello, guys. I have a question. So, the debate we have here is whether humanitarian intervention is whether about strategic interest or moral obligation, right? And time again, we are discussing about self-interest has the strategic interest over here. Now, why are we looking at it in that sense? Say you mentioned this example of if there's a fire in my place and my neighbors as well, has moral obligation, I will look to put off that fire. But has my first step, if I have limited time, I will obviously look at my self-interest and look to put off that fire, right? So circumstances change. So why are we looking at self-interest as strategic interest here?
Yeah, which is why one of the points brought up in the last speech, if I'm quoting it correctly, was basically that actions that most of these countries carry out, like the moral obligation is what the citizens want, right? That's basically what, more or less what you quoted. But I think more often than not, when you look at these countries that declare war or advocate for war, it's mostly the self-interest of the guy who runs everything, right? So if you look at Israel, right, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't attend, even though he's obligated to attend an International Court of Justice conference where, so what the ICJ did, okay, basically the ICJ is the International Court of Justice, right? They're Supreme Court, but pro-max at the international level. And to answer your question, right, Benjamin Netanyahu protected his own self-interest there. Technically, as the leader of Israel and as the leader of this people, as the elected representative, he is morally obligated to go to the ICJ and be held accountable for every one of his actions. But he didn't do that, just to hold on to power. So there are several other examples of this. For example, in Zimbabwe, where dictatorship has been held on for so long, despite these people being questioned. So more often than not, these political leaders aren't the representative of the people, right? They carry forward actions without the consent of the people. There are so many arguments I want to bring up for India, but I'm afraid, it's a little become too political here. So I'll keep that for later. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but these are power plays. These are power plays, right? You're doing all of this to gain power over something. But in times of trouble, self-interest is not a bad thing.
Yeah. I really love how you put self-interest. You differentiated it from strategic interest. To add on to that, yes, it goes self-interest doesn't necessarily have to be strategic interest. However, in today's world, if I can save my house and if I let the other house burn, if I have more to gain from their demolition rather than my survival, that is what I will choose to do, or at least the countries choose to do. So in today's status quo, I think that is what is happening, which is why we stand for strategic interest over moral obligation.
And about the like self-interest point, it is also, I feel like it is not immoral for me to go and put off that fire if I feel like I would get burned if I went there. So this is what I was trying to explain in the selectivity part of this argument also, that we feel like it is not immoral to be selective. It is not immoral to not get into a conflict that we feel like we could not win just for moral obligation. But we feel like if we could win something, and if I felt like it was not a danger for me to go and extinguish the fire and then I do it, that is moral obligation.
Talking about the example which I first stated in my speech, I did that because my third point itself was that human intervention is as an object of the society, thus connecting those two dots, and also talking about what my opposition said here. It's very easy to differentiate something as white or differentiate something as black. For every positive opinion, there is one negative opinion which can be debated. So that is why when we talk about moral obligation, it's very clear and very imperative to understand that it's gray. We can't have pure evil and pure bad.
Yeah, correct. So that's exactly why we mentioned.
I would like to interrupt you all that the debate has ended, and so you all are requested not to have any more back and forth.
So, nice debate. Now my question is to opposition. So your opening statement had a point saying that even if, sorry, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of you want to help nations. Sorry, I'm just blanking out on the point. Yeah, it was something like, well, either way, the better thing to do would be to intervene. Because if you don't intervene, something worse will happen. I want to bring that point to Russia, Ukraine, and America. America was trying to help Ukraine in the war, but when Trump came in, he offered help, but he did it in a malicious way, as in he gave arms and ammunitions, but he also gave them money in terms of a loan. So is that a case where humanitarian intervention is better for the country overall? Because I don't see it as better in the sense that you're basically making Ukraine an economic slave by helping them.
Okay, so talking apart from this debate, the point which I said and the point that you mentioned, let's just purely talk about the example that you right now posed, that US gave the arms and armaments as a loan, correct? Just take that for an example. If that intervention would not have happened on the first place, Ukraine itself would not have received those arms, thus leading to a very faster death than what it's surviving right now. And secondly, what I would like to mention it, yes, arms and armaments given against loan, that is a strategic interest, I agree. But that what brings me to my second point, that that flawed intervention would still be better than no intervention, because that intervention helped Ukraine to sustain what it is right now. So that's my stand on it.
Just taking your point to maybe an exaggerated place, if tomorrow they were to actually make Ukraine in some way their slaves, would it be a better scenario? Keeping a country as your kind of slave while trying to say that you're helping them.
So whilst you're taking on the negative side, you also have the positive side, that Ukraine comes out of this war glorified due to the help that US
As
actually
slaves.
did. No, one second, not as slaves, right? As slaves is the occurrence in your example where you talk about the negative. When we talk about the positive, the arms and armaments are repaid for the loan. So Ukraine comes out positively. So every negative has its own. But
Yeah, so Ukraine ends up losing a few of its natural resources, but it retains its country, and it becomes a
But the only reason they
sovereign.
defended
I would like to interrupt you all here. The debate has ended. No. No more sentences. No.
fine.
This. Would you like me to take this to the judges?
All right. Prop and op. Now, this is very interesting, right? I have one question for the opposition, one for the proposition, right? Now, let us look at the verbatim of this framing. They're arguing that intervention serves more as a tool for interest than obligation. Opposition, in the art of argumentation, do you know what a false dichotomy is? A false dichotomy is essentially saying that if X happens, Y cannot happen. You are arguing from a place that's saying that one must not look at intervention as strategic, but only moral, correct? And to supplement this argument, you applied the US intervening into Afghanistan and Iraq, saying that ultimately they had to pull out, but when they did intervene, it was because to combat the war on terror, correct? Now let us look at why US intervened in Afghanistan and Iraq in the first place. That was a consequence to Bush's war on terror, which was a consequence to 9/11. 9/11 happened when the two planes hit the Twin Towers. Can I ask you the nationality of the hijackers in those planes?
Saudi Arabian.
Saudi Arabian, na?
So to combat the terror of Saudi Arabians, US invaded Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay. No, but the thing is not that simple though. To combat the terror in general, it was US war on terror.
Right.
So for that they invaded. They wanted to get Osama bin Laden. Obviously he would not live in Saudi Arabia after doing that, right?
But bin Laden at that point was in Karachi, not Afghanistan.
Yeah. So they did not know that.
All right.
Yeah. But then when they found out, then they got him from Karachi, right?
Right. Okay. And secondly, correct. They invaded Iraq because they thought Iraq had WMDs, weapons of mass destructions. At the end of all of it, did they find one?
No. But even if they thought Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and they had intelligence, and they even if, let's say for example, you 100% believe that this building is going to fall right now, so you will ask everyone to evacuate. If the building does not end up falling, is that your fault? It's not your fault because you 100% thought that the building was going to fall down, right?
Okay, so with
If it would
this,
have-
we will be ending the
Just-
debate for today.
Can I close this?
This
Just
is
this
the
point.
last question.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
the last question.
Yeah,
Going on.
Yeah, just to close this and to add on to his point, had the building fallen, you not evacuated the person as a point of interest, then it would have been your fault because it's your reason that all these people died, right? So that is the example which you are trying to give here. Preventing something from happening is much better than repeating, oh, that this happened.
All right. Just to conclude this, the US intervention based on your building example. In your case, the intervention was solely humanitarian. When the US went into Afghanistan and Iraq, did they go in with healthcare workers or soldiers?
To find weapons.
I would like, very rude of me to interrupt again, but you both mentioned it's your conclusion. So thank you so much for the audience for such interactive questions.
Just a second. I have one
Yes,
question for proposition. In the sense of the global canvas or otherwise, do you feel that moral obligation is an objective concept?
Right now, it isn't. Simply, okay, so there is something called jurisprudential law, right? I'm an engineering student, so my concept regarding that is kind of weak. But it basically means the philosophy of law, which is the closest thing you have to something that is
Fine, just like, so you are saying that right now it's not objective?
No, simply because there is no...
So if it's not objective, then how do you weigh strategic interest of any country in that? Because moral obligation is not objective. Then how do you know that what is a strategic interest and what is not?
Okay, so according to the UN Charter, right, the United Nations, let's say, is the biggest international institution, there is a definition for what morality is. But a definition for what morality is doesn't necessarily mean that there is like a legislature, in the sense that there aren't articles or clauses that tell you that this can be implemented at this level, or, you know. So there is a definition for what is morally right and morally wrong. There is a definition for morality. What I'm trying to put into words is basically that there is no legislation, there's no commission, convention, or framework like they mentioned again and again. There's no prudential framework that you can take and implement. There's no binding framework. So there is only a definition for what it is, and that definition is what we were arguing upon. The reason there was so much ambiguity in this debate is simply because that, you know, elaboration of what morality is simply isn't there. There is no framework that tells you this is how you take something moral and implement it. You only have prudential, like that international law example I brought up. It's a consensus. International law technically isn't even a proper article. It's not a proper, you know, thing on paper. It's a consensus that people come to and say, okay, these are norms you should follow. Don't kill others. That's part of international law, right? So it's a consensus.
So just one more question. Does it also apply to the concept of humanitarianism? Like, do you also feel that being the concept of humanity is objective, or is it subjective?
So if you look at the humanitarian committees in the United Nations, if you look at UNHRC, SOCOM, or any other humanitarian committees, each committee has its own resolution, right? And those resolutions are easily adoptable, and those resolutions have fixed in certain points with clauses, sub-clauses, defining everything and explaining the implementation procedure for everything and what the mandate of that committee is and what it isn't. So for the humanitarian aspect, obviously, right? Human Rights Council, HCR, IOM, so a lot of committees like that do exist, and that's just within the United Nations. There are several other global institutions which have this. So yeah, when we're talking about humanitarian, of course, definitely. When we're talking about moral, a little ambiguous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, audience, for such interactive and engaging questions. And thank you to the teams as well. The teams are requested to proceed and take their seat among the audience.
That was brilliant, a truly mind-boggling debate.
The camaraderie between the teams was truly compelling.
For our exceptional finalists and moderator, may we please have a huge round of applause, everybody.
Keep it going for our jury. It definitely must have been tough deciding the first amongst equals. Our deepest gratitude to the remarkable individuals who helped shape its course, other judges. Your discerning insights, unwavering attention, and thoughtful deliberations have elevated the standard of discourse we witnessed today. Thank you for lending your time, wisdom, and expertise to this platform.
We would now like to invite our principal, Dr. Surendra Singh Rathod, to come forward on stage and present a memento and a hamper to each of our esteemed judges as a token of our love and respect for them.
Calling upon Dr. Chumki Biswas. The memento.
Please give it up for Dr. Biswas.
Thank you, ma'am, for your time and expertise.
Nilima Malhotra. Thank you, ma'am, for your gracious presence here.
Yeah. Calling upon Dr. Dhananjay Thekidat. Please give a round of applause. Thank you, sir, for your time and experience.
Thank you, Principal Sir, for honoring our judges with this meaningful gesture. We'll have a group photo. You may now take your seats. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I invite our distinguished chief guest, Mr. Sanjay Zog, to share his thoughts with us.
Respected professors, my elders, senior fellow friends. Quite interesting debate. You know, I come from a journalist or a journalism where we have been told that you have to speak less but write more. But at this point in time, I will speak more, at least for 10 minutes that I have been given, because the issue is literally, my job as a journalist is to listen and report. You know, the students that had come out with an argument that were so lively, taking this entire world and global perspective with geopolitics, which I have been following for now almost 3 decades. I think the points that have been raised are of a great relevance. I will just stitch, each points in just maybe a 1 minute or 2 minutes and just take it further. First point, India, we are also positioning ourselves as a superpower, looking at the geopolitics and what both the guys have been telling, or both the teams who are discussing about, is morality really matters or is strategic interest are of a great importance? As a journalist, I will straight away, point out, and it has been written about in the day-to-day editorials, is that A, the strategic necessity is important and the strategic decisions do matter. Give you the examples. Mr. Trump has been mentioned about both these teams. What Mr. Trump has doing in the second era. Nandan Nilekani has come out with earlier, about a decade ago, with a word called disruption. Does he not making a disruption? He has already made a global disrupted kind of an order, a proposition. Second, as we talked about, is it a moral Or is it a strategic that he is talking about? Because all the time he is talking about making America great. So it is from the point of view, does not fit into the morality definition, but it is purely a strategic move and which he is playing to the entire world. Second, India and US have been a great friends for so many years. Look at the era of George Bush. He made us to write what I have been following, because the power sector which I have been writing about is the Indo-Nuclear Treaty in 2005. That was a great turning point for India to open up our nuclear sector. Was it not a strategic decision by Manmohan Singh government to enter into that agreement? It is yes, because Mr. Modi just a week back has talked about India's nuclear position to take it to 80,000 megawatt from the present 7,800 megawatt. Second, Mr. Modi, in fact, Mr. Trump has been talking about, giving that 50% tariff imposition, 25% additional, because we are drawing or we are procuring oil from Russia. Just to tell you some numbers, India per day is importing 1.58 billion barrels per day of oil, which is just significant when it comes to the global order. But why US is objecting to this kind of an import? Because the proximity India is enjoying with Russia is a kind of a bête noire for US to take its positioning as I am the superpower, I am the global power to be looked at. Second, I must admire Mr. Jaishankar, who had been to Russia, who met Putin, and saying from the Russian soil that yes, it is US which has told us, considering the availability of crude and also the volatility in its sector, India should definitely go ahead with a purchase and the procurement of oil and even gas from Russia. So we are doing the same. Secondly, he went on telling from the Russian soil is that China is the number one importer, not of the oil, but also of the LNG, liquefied natural gas. So we are going to do that, and it is coming to a kind of an interesting scenario where India, at least for a moment, has decided to go ahead with its own strategic positioning instead of buckling to the pressure from US and Trump. Third, very interesting. Till now, Mr. Trump, because we are talking about geopolitics and it has to be discussed now. Mr. Trump has been initially was ridiculing. He went on harassing, quote unquote. He went on, just making noises about the manner in which Ukrainian President Zelensky is taking on Russia for now almost 3 years. But look at the change in the stand. What you mentioned about. Now he has offered, according to newspaper reports which you carry, has already offered a $50 billion aid now to Ukraine, which he was not at all ready, in fact, pampering Russia. Why there has been a change in this kind of a scenario? Again, from making America rich and making America great. That's a strategic point. Fourth, very interestingly, look at it, so India may be positioning itself as a Vishwaguru. India may be positioning itself, looking at, if we are South-South, so India is great. No problem. G20, I have covered extensively. So they are talking about South-South because, we have to have a multilateralism and to have an option apart from just looking at US or Russia. Now look at it. China, quite interesting. The other day, the envoy talks about what? Don't be silent. Don't be, remain quiet. The word exactly, the sentence that he used is, the silence makes you, or innocence makes you, gullible, in the sense, US will try to exert a pressure and try to exploit from you. I think, but don't go by China, pampering India at this point in time. China has got, quote unquote, vicious circle and, kind of its own policy basically to position, because China is looking at as a fighter to take on Trump. And that's why looking at having a kind of a ready-made market available in India. So don't go by China what you are doing. What China has done in Arunachal Pradesh. You may be aware of it. They are constructing a multi-billion-dollar irrigation project, which will definitely hamper our interest. Again, China is doing from its strategic point, but at the same time, as the word goes, enemy is a friend. So China is definitely supporting India at this point in time, but India will have to trade very cautiously, even though China is supporting on this. And the fifth position. So against this backdrop, when the overall world and the global order is totally disrupted because of US 2.0, I think there are 2-3 things India needs to do. As a journalist, of course, we will write, and we keep on writing about that he made a mention about Gaza and Palestine. What's happening? You know, India and Israel are best friends. No, it's fantastic. You know, we are having the military relationship. We are also having a strategic relationship when it comes to supply, not just arms and ammunition, but also an advanced technology. It's not enough. What Israel is doing in Gaza has to be condemned. Why India remain abstinent? That question needs to be asked. And as a journalist, I will certainly ask, whether you like it or dislike it. Second, the way US is pampering Israel at the cost of what is happening at Gaza, I think that needs to be condemned, and this has been repeatedly taken up at the global level. But when it comes to India taking up the position, why India is still silent is a question that needs to be asked. And the third, against this backdrop, I still feel India, you know, जैसे कहा जाता है ना कि हमारा भी वक्त आएगा, तो इंडिया का वक्त आने ही वाला है. But what India needs to do? India needs to have an equidistance policy, not the status quo policy when it comes to foreign affairs. That means what? India will definitely have to see that its relationship with US definitely increase, but not at the cost of agriculture and livelihood or livestock. B, India definitely will have to consolidate its relationship with Russia, because we have to have an alternate market and also a kind of a source to have our arms and ammunitions as well as oil and natural gas. Third, China. You know, just to give you, the other day, the reports which have come from CNN, BBC, as well as some of our national dailies have written about, is that, you know, initially there was a much of a, a taboo, like why to go for Chinese products and all. So during Modi 010, they tried to curb it. Now suddenly there has been a new kind of a wave wherein the government is opening up for importing the Chinese market. Why is that so? Because China is supplying the rare earth which is required for our electricity vehicle revolution, which is happening. Just to tell you that India is right now in the implementation of 5 lakh megawatt of what we call as a renewable energy to bring it down our reliance on fossil fuel. And for that, China is definitely required. The batteries, from where are you going to source that? China. But at the same time, instead of just going or making much gaga about China and pampering them, we should focus on certain other countries like what? The recent foreign trade agreement that we have got with Europe is of great importance, because we are going to have artificial intelligence, software, agriculture. Apart from that, what we are looking at is the softer version of agriculture, which will lead to agricultural businesses, which is mushrooming to take care of our increasing population. So again, to conclude, India is certainly marching ahead with a lot of caution, but it certainly have to have much more caution not to get buckled by what US is doing. B, Russia and India have been great friends over the years. That does not mean the over-reliance will some kind may create a problem in the days to come for India. So B, trade cautiously. Third, China is not going to leave India like this, because China is certainly looking at to encash and exploit the ready-made available market which is there in India. So India and this present establishment will have to further tighten the belt, rewrite and revisit and reorient the foreign policy. B, also to look at much more alternative markets. And then only, as I said, India's days are going to be here, and India will succeed, and India will create its own kind of a record in the days to come. Thanks a lot for giving a patience hearing, and all the best for both of your teams. Great job. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Jog.
Let's warmly welcome our guest of honor, Ms. Purvi Bhave, as I invite her to address us. Round of applause.
Thank you so much, Honorable Father, professors, uh, juries and judges and the guests and also the students. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege of coming here and witnessing something I've not witnessed in a long time. Because in today's world of polarized politics, having get to hear a debate of respect and reason has become a huge privilege. I do work for a news channel, so I know how debates happen. They are mostly played for the gallery and not with an intent to, brainstorm what could be better for the society. And that's why I feel extremely happy and privileged, because genuinely there were a lot of points that I felt like I need to incorporate or I need to keep reading about as a person. Coincidentally, I have written a poem in Marathi about chessboard, that is Buddhibal. I'm not going to recite the poem, but because I feel that a lot of people are non-Maharashtrians and it's a difficult poem to even for normal Maharashtrians to understand. But I'll just explain what it is about. It imagines the brain or the mind as a chessboard, wherein typically we imagine the white side as the true moral and the black side as the immoral, wrong, etc. But the truth is that even in our mind, eventually we surpass the rules constantly, and we see a lot of gray zone when we are thinking about a lot of social issues nowadays. Or even in our day-to-day life, we don't really know which side to take, and there is a constant duel. When we are debating outside of our own self, it is very important to surpass or win over that duel within your own mind and have a stand for yourself, and then be able to make an opinion which you can put up against or in favor of a particular point. I feel that giving a platform to students wherein they can go research, they make up their own mind, and be able to talk in favor of or in opposition of a particular, any important issue in today's era is extremely important. And I would like to congratulate the college for giving this dais nationwide to all the colleges, because I really feel that people are losing the sense of rationality, and it's very important for the next generation to be able to understand both the sides, even if they are going to take one side whenever it comes to choosing. And this is what I really feel really excited about and very proud of, that I got to see here today. So thank you so much once again for having me here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience with us.
We now have the pleasure of inviting our guest of honor, Mr. Adit Ganguly.
There's always a first for something, so this is the first time I've been the guest of honor for anything. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for getting me to this stage. And I may talk a lot of random rubbish, for lack of a better word, because I've spent most of my college years on that side, so it feels nice and a bit maybe life has come full circle to be we used to always make fun of the guest of honor as a college student, so you guys can make fun of me. Now it's your turn. So having I love watching movies, and I always believe there's a song or a dialogue for every situation. And when it comes to debates, especially having been part of so many debates back in school and college, there's this dialogue from Ye Jawani Hai Diwani. I don't know how many of you people have seen it, where Bunny tells Naina, "Tu right nahi hai Naina, bas mujhse bahut alag hai." So I think a debate perfectly captures that. And while I'm not an expert on what the topic was for this debate, absolutely not. I just feel it's very tough. I would like to it's easy to say everyone's a winner, but debates are never easy. and like, it's like a cricket match where the toss decides who's going to bat and who's going to bowl. And sometimes the top, like which side of the topic you guys are on, that just decides the thing. That's like the pitch conditions of the match, like, that decides the outcome even before a single ball is bowled. That's the sad reality of debates, I feel. But it's tough for one side to, like, who have their backs against the wall and still make compelling, like, points to it's. And like, on another day maybe you would be on the other side, and you guys might win the match. It's all about timing and luck. I don't know if debates are not just about points. I just feel, having been part of so many debates, it's about luck and which side you are on. So like, I don't know who's going to win today's debate, so just don't feel sad. At the same time, feel elated about the fact that you won, because tomorrow you'll be on the other side. And just take it as a learning experience, because like, you're as good as your last debate, but at the same time there's so much to learn. And like while many of us might have felt like, which way this debate was headed, I would just like to say, like, just being there, being as the final four finalists, that just says a lot about your conversational skills, because I come from that background where there are conversations happening on everything and anything under the sun. So like, for you guys to make such compelling arguments, because I'm pretty sure in previous rounds you might have won the round being on a side where you weren't expected to win, but you four are here for a reason. So give yourselves a huge round of applause, not to just you four, but anyone and everyone who takes part in a debate, because it's not easy. It's not easy because, for all the reasons I said, it just matters like on your day. It's not just how good you are, but on which side of the fence you are on. So that's all I like to say. I like to keep my speech as short and as simple. And thank you so much once again for everyone and anyone who kept this debate and reminding me how good it feels to come to college and to feel like a student once again. I think I've come to a college like after maybe like 10 years or so. So thank you so much for reminding me, especially you Fantastic Four. Like, it's never too late, and you can never be like, you're always young to learn. Thank you for teaching me so much about, like, how to, I won't get into the topic of the conversation, but just how to have not just an argument, but just to talk and listen to each other. So thank you very much. I don't know your phone names, but thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for teaching, for making me feel young again. Like, maybe maybe the youngest guest here, but thank you so much, and give yourselves a huge round of applause, not to you all four, but if other participants are here, like, thank you so much, and you guys are doing a great job. So it just depends on which side of the debate you guys are. So don't feel disheartened even if you didn't make it here, and even to whoever ends up losing this final round, just it wasn't like, I wish you were on the other side of the argument. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, sir, for your compelling and thought-provoking speech.
To express our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guests, we would now like our director, Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza, to come forward on stage.
Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza will present a memento and a hamper to each of our distinguished guests as a token of our love and respect.
Calling upon our chief guest, Mr. Sanjay Jog.
Our guest of honor, Ms. Purvi Bhave. Round of applause, please.
Our guest of honor, Mr. Adit Ganguly. Our gratitude to each of you for your gracious presence here and warm and cordial sentiments.
Thank you, Father.
And now, the moment we've all been anticipating has arrived. It's time to honor those who have maneuvered the grand chessboard of ideas with precision, poise, and unmatched strategic brilliance. The masters of discourse who've turned words into moves and arguments into winning endgames.
The best adjudicator, whose discerning judgment has elevated our debates, shall be celebrated and felicitated by our principal, Dr. Surendra Singh Rathod, and the Dean of Students' Welfare. Kindly make your way onto the stage. We request you, sir, to kindly announce the winners. No worries. Sir, please make your way to the stage.
So please.
So, best adjudicator is Sanjod Umrajkar.
Congratulations, Sanjod. The best speaker, whose eloquence has left an indelible mark on the chessboard of ideas. May I now invite our chief guest, Mr. Sanjay Jog, on the stage. So we request you to please announce the winner.
Oh, the best speaker is Swayam Krishnan. So all the best and congratulations.
Now, we move ahead to the runners-up team, the duo whose arguments have challenged and inspired us all. For this felicitation, may I invite Ms. Purvi Bhave ma'am and Mr. Adit Ganguly to the stage and announce the runner-up.
So the runner-up is, and we should have a huge round of applause for them. It's CRMD 21, Triple IT Nagpur. Congratulations, guys.
You guys sure put up a tough fight. Congratulations.
Thank you. And finally, the crowning move, the Grand Masters of CRMD 2025. With every argument a calculated strategy, every word a masterstroke. You've outplayed, outthought, and outshone your opponents.
May I now invite our director, Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza, and our assistant director, Reverend Father Trevor Pereira, onto the stage to present the ultimate honor to the champions of this intellectual chessboard. We request Reverend Father Valerian to kindly announce the winners. Let him.
And the winner is obvious, CRMD number 11, SRM University, Chennai.
Congratulations to all our winners and indeed to all participants. Your contributions have made this event truly memorable. Group photo.
Congratulations to all our winners and indeed all our participants. May I please request you all to take your seats? Kulkarni, the General Secretary of the Students' Council, to propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the entire team behind CRMD 2025, I, Yashdeep Kulkarni, the General Secretary of the Students' Council, take this moment to express our deepest gratitude to all those who made this journey not just possible, but truly special. First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks to Reverend Father Valerian D'Souza for his unwavering blessings and support. To our beloved principal, Dr. Surendra Singh Rathod, and our Dean of Students' Welfare, Dr. Bhushan Patil, for their constant guidance and support in shaping this platform of intellectual excellence. A very special mention to Dr. Joseph Rodrigues, our CRMD coordinator, the gentle force behind every plan and every perfect moment. Sir, you're the kind of mentor who doesn't just teach, but quietly lights the way for us all. To our dedicated faculty coordinators who led every responsibility with such grace. Dr. Hemant Khanolkar, Professor Prasad Lalit for managing finance and logistics with perfection. Professor Gauri Jagoshte for orchestrating the on and off stage transitions so seamlessly. Mrs. Jyoti Kargutkar, Professor Hina Pendhari, and Professor Naval Dandekar for ensuring our guests were always cared for. Mr. Ajay Kohli and Mr. Nilesh Patil for powering the tech behind every session. Dr. Sapna Prabhu and Dr. Dilip Chandra for their time reviewing scripts and mentoring our moderators. Dr. Kajal Kumari, Professor Astha Bhatia, and Ms. Anivia Pereira for shaping the anchors, selecting the college team, and refining every last document, word, and rehearsal. Dr. Sunil Yadav and Professor Gajendra Singh for ensuring smooth flow and crowd management. Mr. Dias for being our ever-reliable, behind-the-scenes problem solver. To our HODs and all faculty members, thank you for your support and encouragement. To my Students' Council and the media team, thank you for pouring your heart, energy, and soul into every detail. You didn't just organize an event, you created a memory. And finally, to our audience, thank you for being the reason this stage mattered. Your cheers, your silence, your presence. It all gave life to every debate and meaning to every word spoken. Together, we didn't just host CRMD 2025. We lived it, we loved it, and we'll carry it with us always. Thank you.
Thank you, Yashdeep.
As we draw the curtains on the 27th edition of CRMD, we reflect on the battlefield we've just witnessed. Not one of swords, but of strategy. Not one of power, but of persuasion.
Today's debates were more than matches of intellect. They were calculated moves on a grand chessboard of global thought, where each speaker made their mark with truth, tenacity, and triumph.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guests, our panel of judges, our faculty, our exceptional participants, and every individual who's made this celebration of critical discourse possible. Is there something wrong with my mic? Sorry. Audience, can you all hear me? It's good. If you all can hear me, can you all clap once?
If you all can hear me, can you clap twice?
If you all can hear me, please keep clapping for yourselves.
Because you have been such an amazing audience. Thank you for lending your attention, your silence, and your energy.
As we leave, let us do so with wiser minds. Because in debate, as in chess, it's not about who dominates the board, but who understands its design.
Until we meet again, may your thoughts remain sharp, your truths remain bold, and your words always move the world one step forward.
That's all from CRMD 2025. Have a great day, everybody. This is Charlo Mendes
And Joshua DeMello signing off.